the whole world was doing heroin. Like, not literally, but in my world, like when my mom would approach me, I'm like, Mom, everybody's doing these oxys and heroin. Like, what's the big deal? You know, like, I know things aren't going well, but everybody does it. It literally becomes so normal, that way of life, that you don't even grasp reality at the fact, like, what you're doing is so far out of the norm. It's not normal.
Whether they're struggling from mental health issues or social issues, family relationship issues, they'll say, you know, I'm just craving to use to self-medicate because I don't know how else to deal with like what's going on, which leads me to have high cravings to want to use. I know it's not the right answer or the right decision, but it's the only thing I know and have known for the past X amount of months or years.
Right.
I occasionally have using dreams where I get high in my dream. Think about that. I am unconscious, asleep, and my brain is bringing that back while I'm asleep, and I'm experiencing it in my sleep 13 years ago.
That's one of the biggest things that you can look at is your surroundings, and that would include the people that you're spending time with. You know, are you with people that are like actively working some sort of program? Are they sober people, or are you still hanging out with your buddies that are, you know, smoking the devil's lettuce here and there, and you're like the clean one? You know, those things are obviously going to induce a lot of cravings. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
And we got Dr. T.
Hello, hello.
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use. Thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, Ben?
Yes, sirree. That's a fact.
Yes, right, T.
All right.
Yes.
That's becoming like your thing, right?
I'm trying to find a punchline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're
Was that
there.
good?
Yeah. Yes, sirree. That's a fact.
Yeah.
I mean, you could change it, you know, every other episode or something.
Yeah. I had to leave the correcto mundo behind. Remember?
Yeah. Yeah. You gave up
My
Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles episodes.
My Spanglish.
Yeah. All right. So in today's episode, we wanted to discuss the 4 C's of addiction. Have y'all heard of the 4 C's of addiction before?
I actually had not. I had heard of the 3 C's that they talk about in Al-Anon.
Which are?
You didn't cause it, you can't control it, and you can't cure it.
You didn't cause the addiction, you can't cure the addiction, and you can't control the addiction. Tita, did you ever hear that?
From Al-Anon?
Yeah.
I've heard of that, yep.
Yeah. Well, today, it's the 4 C's of addiction. We're just going to jump right into it because I'm awfully tired. I didn't get much sleep last night for reasons that, you know, use your imagination. I don't know.
Shouldn't leave a cliffhanger like that.
Make up
Tom
something
has
in
anxiety.
your mind. Make
Yes.
something up in your mind.
Tom has anxiety.
Yeah,
The
I have
episode
anxiety.
about heart disease really did a number on Tom. And I'm glad it's impacted someone.
Yes, it did. I went home and I'm like, I think I'm dying.
I'm surprised you didn't call me.
Because you go to bed at like 8:30. So, you know, you know what? It didn't even really start affecting me until I was watching. Have you watched Slow Horses on Apple TV? Mm-mm. It's really good. But yeah, I was just laying there watching that, and I, felt a little something, and I'm like, uh-oh, here we go.
Little heart flutter watching Slow Horses.
Which isn't uncommon for me. Like, I get them. And, so then I freak myself out. I am a little bit of a worry wart.
You're a hypochondriac for sure. To anybody that didn't listen to the previous episode, we were talking about heart conditions and whatnot from drug use, and all of a sudden Tom has a heart condition.
Heart murmur. He was like stuck on that today.
I mean, if we did an episode on Ebola today, he'd come in tomorrow with Ebola. Like, I'm dead serious.
You know who I have a lot in common with?
Who?
Sal DiStefano from Mind Pump. I'm going to see how many episodes in a row I can go referencing Mind Pump. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
All right, let's get into this. The first C for the 4 C's of addiction is craving. And craving is it's pretty interesting. Ben, I have a question for you.
All right.
What is the difference between a craving and the compulsion to use?
And the compulsion?
Well, let me reframe this because I hear this a lot in the rooms, and maybe it's not the compulsion, but they oftentimes differentiate cravings to something else.
I know. So I had anxiety about these 4 C's not following what I was taught in AA. It's a little different. We differentiate between a mental obsession.
That's it.
And a craving. Where, so like a craving, according to the whiteboard of knowledge over here, is an intense desire to
giving
use.
away our things. This is supposed to be in our head.
Well, we have a whiteboard of knowledge. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
So it's a craving, according to the whiteboard of knowledge, is an intense desire to use or unable to resist. So the craving, according to 12-step programs and Alcoholics Anonymous in particular, in the doctor's opinion, that's a chapter in there, if you're not familiar, it basically states that you can't have a craving until you've already put the first one in your body. So, like, I can't crave alcohol until I've started to feel the effects of the first half of that beer. Then I crave more. The mental obsession is for me, here I am 13 years clean, and if all of a sudden I get this obsession to use, like I'm thinking about heroin or thinking about having a drink, there's a difference between the two. One, it's already in my body. One, I'm completely detoxed, been free of it for a significant time, and there's no physiological, biological effect affecting my brain telling me to use more.
Right. No, that makes sense.
It's been removed.
Mm-hmm.
T, is there something like in terms of imaging that when you look at like a drug addict's brain, and I don't know if you know the answer to this or not, we may need a neurologist to look at, explain like somebody's brain. If they're having a craving, would you be able to tell in some sort of imaging, like if a certain part of the brain lights up?
No.
No?
No.
Oh.
You know, when we talk about the like neurobiology of addiction, there's different parts of the brain more so that are involved in others, but there's no specific imaging as of yet to see. You know, they've done like PET imaging on people, PET scans, like a nuclear medicine scan, where it uses glucose uptake in the body, in the brain, and they've looked at what areas light up more so, and like in people who've used like cocaine, or even they've used it in sugar, you know, to show what areas. That's how they know what specific areas are involved. But when you're having a craving, whatever that might mean to someone, not specifically studied.
So, Ben, are you saying that basically if, say, somebody has a week off of opiates, you're saying that they are having more of a mental obsession to use rather than a craving, or is it playing semantics?
That's a little caught in the middle, because you have to consider that because you said a week specifically off opiates, they're probably still in withdrawal somewhat, post-acute withdrawal symptoms, you know, sleeplessness, sneezing, anxiety. That's an opiate one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of sneezing.
Really?
Yawning,
Oh, man.
sneezing, runny eyes, runny nose.
Why? Why that in particular?
Yeah, one time when I came off Suboxone, I was sneezing for like a month straight, literally every 10 seconds. It was the craziest thing.
It has to do with all like the norepinephrine, histamine, all of that release, histamine release. So when you go through it, you get that like diarrhea. Everything just kind of, I tell patients, everything loosens up. So, you know, you get muscle aches and pains. You feel like you have the flu. Sneezing, yawning, runny eyes, runny nose, diarrhea, all related to.
And is that like your body kind of just flushing a lot of that stuff out, or is it just
not flushing? It's the opiate coming out of the system off of the receptors that it originally activated, right? All of the other.
I feel like too,
receptors.
and So when I was at the methadone clinic, they gave me this little card that said, in the event of an emergency, this patient will need more painkillers than the normal person or something, because my tolerance was high. But I feel like the reason I bring that card up is I feel like, and this is just off my personal experience going through withdrawal, like almost like everything becomes hypersensitive. Mm-hmm. My body's responses, like the muscle aches. I'm used to being on opiates, therefore, like I feel no muscle aches, and all of a sudden I'm like feeling everything without the opiate blocking any pain or whatever the case is. You know, opiates make you constipated, so you take them out of your system, you're going to experience the other end of the spectrum. I feel like everything gets enhanced. You
get this like rebound hypersensitivity where it's like, you know, even the brush of like a sheet on your leg, mm-hmm. you know, you're like, you cause restless legs. It just makes you hypersensitive.
Wow.
I feel like emotionally too. I mean, that's a sad time going through withdrawal. Yeah. Like, I mean, I can't tell you how many gallons of tears I cried going through those withdrawals and detoxes.
Yeah. Well, so for the sake of this, the craving aspect of it, I mean, I would pretty much equate it to if you have some time clean and you have the urge to pick up. I think one of the first things that I would look at are your surroundings. Like, are you putting yourself in a position to be tempted, you know, to have the cravings? Because a lot of times people in early recovery, they want to continue the lifestyle that they had, but minus the drugs and the alcohol. You know, I would walk into down here in Lake Worth, Dave's Last Resort and Raw Bar, right on Lake Worth.
I know Dave's Last Resort.
Yeah. And I remember I had I don't know, maybe 3 months probably. And I had completed detox. I had completed residential PHP, and I think I definitely was in intensive outpatient at that point. But just walked over there to grab lunch, and you know I was by myself, and that was like my scene. You know, the bar and the sports and everything, and you know I see people sitting there, you know, middle of the afternoon, just frosted mugs and everything. And that was one of the first times that I really kind of had that urge to drink.
Your mouth was watering?
Yeah, like the whole thing. My mouth was watering. I could taste it, you know, in a way. And I would equate that to a craving.
So since Dr. T's here, I've kind of never I'm really making an effort to think about it scientifically speaking. You know the old adage that everybody says in early recovery, hang out in a barber shop long enough, eventually you're going to get a haircut. And I'm bringing that up because you were talking about going to a bar. You're a garden variety drunk, Mr. Norm from Cheers here. And for you sitting in a bar. So what I would equate that to is I think being aware that there's more to it than just sitting in the barber shop. Like for me, even with the years of sobriety that I have, let's say I'm talking about the mental obsession. I've been clean a long time. There are situations which for me cause euphoric recall. Like for instance, if I am in my, you know, car and a certain electronic music comes on that I listened to when I ate a lot of MDMA, also known as ecstasy, and like had some experiences at raves in Miami or something, like I will literally feel tingles on my scalp and throughout my body. And that euphoric recall, I mean, that's physiological. Like you can see the hair stand up on my arms.
Yeah.
There's still, after all these years, that physiological response. And I don't know really the science behind the euphoric recall stuff.
Maybe it's like Pavlov's, like positive associations, positive reinforcements. Like, you know, we do reference that a lot. And even like, you know, how when you train dogs, they associate good behavior with treats, right? Positive reinforcement or negative reinforcement. There is that as well. But maybe that's just still part of your internal system, like your internal drive.
I think too, in early recovery, I like that we brought this up, like with Pavlov's dog thing, the reward system, you're walking into the bar, your mouth is watering for a beer, looking at that cold frosted mug. I think that has more to do with remembering the rewards, because we quickly forget the consequences.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't remember the bad times when I'm thinking about doing ecstasy. I'm like, ooh, ecstasy. Remember that time? Yeah. Like,
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, and that's going to sound funny, but in that specific situation, had somebody gone and put on like, Motley Crue, it would have made things so much more worse for me because that was like, now you're putting me even more in that setting. Or if they put on like, I listen to 80s hair bands and like old outlaw country. So if you put on either Waylon Jennings or Motley Crue, there's a high chance I was going to relapse that day. Sounds funny, but it's serious. And I think these are the types of things that, like, if you're noticing that you're having some cravings or some mental obsessions, I think you can use them interchangeably for the sake of this conversation. That's one of the biggest things that you can look at is your surroundings. And that would include the people that you're spending time with. Are you with people that are like actively working some sort of program? Are they sober people, or are you still hanging out with your buddies that are, smoking the devil's lettuce here and there, and you're like the clean one? Those things are obviously going to induce a lot of cravings. And as time goes on and the longer that you're sober, the cravings, I would say, dissipate, and then maybe you have more of the mental obsession, but even that, like that, myself 13 years later, I can still go, me and my wife, we like to go to Melbourne Beach, and there's this like little tiki bar thing that's on the beach, and it'll be a fleeting thought, but it's like, man, that would be nice. Go sit up there. It's Saturday afternoon, waves, no clouds. I never drank on the beach. I never have. I think it'd be pretty, fun. I grew up in Pennsylvania, Ben.
Oh, yeah.
There ain't no beaches there, but that's 13 years later, and it's in one ear, out the other, if that's even the right way to put it.
as always, I mentioned this, a lot of our listeners are family with loved ones in active addiction or early recovery, whatever the case is. I think it's really, really, really important to hit home the point that this goes back to, like, why don't they just stop? Mm-hmm. Where I think what we're kind of getting at here in a roundabout way is, like, this is physiologically locked into their body. And I want to give a really good example that this brought up for me. With 13 years of recovery under my belt, not touching a single mood and mind altering substance, I occasionally have using dreams where I get high in my dream. Think about that. I am unconscious, asleep, and my brain is bringing that back while I'm asleep, and I'm experiencing it in my sleep. 13 years ago. That's powerful. And I think what parents and loved ones tend to forget is, like, that this is locked in. Like, addiction is so powerful. If it's that powerful to the point where I'm dreaming about it and I'm unconscious, that should say a lot. There's a lot of evidence there that there's so much more to this than just willpower.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, when I ask patients all the time about cravings to, like, mirror that, a lot of times they will say, yes, but really it's usually, if they're a drinker, like, either at night, because that was my routine. I would go to work, stop at the liquor store, go home, drink all the way until it was bedtime. And then, or, if it was an opiate user, I would usually use opiates, at this certain time of this day. That's when cravings really hit me, because it was like part of their routine. It was innate to what they were doing, and it just became second nature. So a lot of times people will say that. Also, they'll talk about cravings a lot with, like, emotions, because whether they're struggling from mental health issues or social issues, family relationship issues, they'll say, I'm just craving to use to self-medicate because I don't know how else to deal with, like, what's going on, which leads me to have high cravings to want to use. I know it's not the right answer or the right decision, but it's the only thing I know and have known for the past X amount of months or years.
Right.
Something I want to hit home. I honestly don't believe that anybody who hasn't experienced active addiction themselves can understand what the word craving really, really means, like down to the core of their body. Like, I, to this day, cannot put in words how powerful that craving is. Like, my mind was so set on getting high, and it was like an uncontrollable, I have to get high no matter what. Like, as much as I needed to breathe. And, some people, my mom will be like, oh, well, sometimes I have cravings for chocolate. I'm like, not even close. Like, not even in the same realm. It's so freaking powerful. I don't even know how to explain it to someone who hasn't experienced it.
I've shared this story before, and I'm going to share it quick, and then we'll move on. I had a mother here, and she couldn't wrap her head around why her son would not stop using cocaine. And he was having a lot of heart issues from his cocaine use. And so the mom's sitting in front of me, and I said, do you like cookies and candies and cakes and stuff like that? She's like, oh, yeah, I love them. And I'm like, if you were to have, a box of Oreos in front of you and you ate one, are you able to just kind of take one or two out and put it back, in the pantry or whatever and be done? And she's like, no. And I said the same thing with like potato chips and stuff like that. I'm like, that is in its most simplest terms. And this, this mother, she didn't, extremely ignorant when it came to addiction. That is at its simplest terms what your son is going through times 1,000, and she's like, wow, breaking it down for her. Like, and that's, I think I haven't met many people that can just eat 2 Oreos. Can you?
Lately, I've been...
Yeah, but that you don't count. Can you?
No.
No,
you want to eat more, that like sweet sensation. It makes you happy.
Yeah, and
it makes you feel fulfilled.
Your whole body language over there, she just started glowing. You could see. You see the same thing with addicts when they're craving. Their whole body language, their tone, complexion, everything changes.
Right.
Do you and Pierre ever lay in bed and open up a box of Oreos?
No.
You really should. It's a magical experience. Anyways, all right. So the next one that we have listed here is control, and that's going to be and the whiteboard of knowledge here shares that it's the inability to regulate your use, using more than intended. And I don't know what that last thing says.
The inability to stop.
Right.
Like you said, that inability to, you use once, like it just keeps happening and happening. You get the craving and then you use, or whatever. Is it the chicken or the egg? And then you just start spiraling.
Yeah. And it's complete loss of control. And I think in terms of Ben, you chime in on this that's so funny. You just pulled this book out. Cause I was going to say, how does this correlate in terms of the 12 steps? And I think that it would just kind of correlate to, step 1, which is
we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable.
Yeah. So, in simplest terms for me, and there's this saying in the rooms, 1 is too many and 1,000's never enough. Once you ingest said drug of choice or alcohol or whatever, total loss of control. And I think that's what differentiates us from normal people is we're not able to, and trust me, I wish I could go to the tiki bar in Melbourne Beach and have a beer and enjoy the scenery and stuff like that. But I would end up in Martin County Jail or wherever, and that'd be the end of it. I'd be divorced. I'd lose my children. So what are you looking at, Ben?
No, everything that you're saying aligns with this. It literally says loss of control. The phenomenon of craving. Talking about basically, we've kind of touched on all of it.
Yeah.
I'd like to point out the fact, you asked me to recite step 1. We were powerless. Were is past tense. A lot of people hear the word powerless and I interpreted that as, look at all these weak people in AA, these people that say they're powerless. Like, I'm a man, I ain't powerless. What they're referring to, though, is the powerlessness once you take that first drink. I'm no longer powerless over alcohol because I haven't put any in my body yet. So that powerlessness doesn't kick in until that point. And, after having that first one, that loss of control comes. And the loss of control is what's known as the symptom, so to speak, of the alcohol.
And I think that plays into what we talked about before we started the episode today about what are common things or traits in people that may not allow them to have continued sobriety. Is I think a lot of people come in and they want to control the situation and they want to say, I do have control. I can just have one drink, or I'm not an alcoholic. I'm not a drug user. I'm just here because I need help or guidance. But at the end of it, they are fulfilled and happy and come back oftentimes and they'll say, wow, I can't believe I really said that when I first came in here. I didn't really understand that I actually don't have control over what was going on or what I was doing.
Yeah.
So
I do want to take 2 seconds too. I can't help myself since we cracked the big book. I think it's important to give some simple examples as well. Like I'll be brief on this because we've talked about it 100 times previously, but maybe we have some new listeners. I always use the example of Adderall. You have a normal person, you give them Adderall, it speeds them up, it's speed. You give Adderall to somebody who legitimately has ADHD, it slows them down. Literally, the same drug having a different effect on two different people. The way drugs and substances affect people is different. Alcohol is a depressant. It's supposed to slow you down, make you sleepy. You give me alcohol, dude, and I am bouncing off the walls. I'm ready to run a marathon. I'll go to the gym. I'll do it all drunk. Like, it gives me an immense amount of energy. Opiates do the same for me. A lot of people take an opiate, and they're ready to take a nap, where with me, I'm like bouncing off the walls. I'm super talkative. And I just really think it's important for loved ones to understand, like, you may have taken that drug yourself and it might not have affected you the same way. And another simple example I use is a peanut allergy. Some people can eat peanuts, some people can't. What's the difference between the two? The way that their body metabolizes it. Like, coming to the understanding that just because you drank alcohol and your loved one drank alcohol doesn't mean your body did the same thing with the alcohol that his did.
Or their brain, or their ability to control one drink versus a whole case. It's all falls in line.
Mm-hmm. There's so much science behind it.
Yeah.
It really is. And I don't know enough of it to keep going.
The next one's going to be compulsion and using despite consequences. This one's interesting because, again, when you talk to families, loved ones and stuff, they're obviously the ones that see the consequences coming down the pipe, and us as the addicts and the alcoholics, it's not that we don't see the consequences, we don't suffer the consequences, we just don't give a shit about the consequences. And that is one of the things that, I think differentiates us to normal people. A normal person, if they happen to get picked up for a DUI, they're probably not going to continue drinking, or they're going to be a lot more careful. They're going to take Ubers or whatever the case is. But for us, it's like, oh, that was a nothing burger. I'm just going to keep moving on. But families and loved ones, they see these consequences coming down the pipe, and oftentimes they're the ones that they are allowing themselves to suffer these consequences more than the addict is. I can't tell you how many conversations we've all had here with parents and loved ones, and they're sitting in front of us and saying, I can't believe that he's doing this and he's doing that. And, does he not see the things that he's doing to his family? And then we're left to say, well, he's not here. It sounds like, and Ben, you say this a lot, like to parents and loved ones, what's your drug of choice? And oftentimes the parents and loved ones' drug of choice is their addict son or daughter or spouse or whatever the case is. And a lot of this stuff is driven by the compulsion to use and consequences. I say this all the time. Consequences, oftentimes they're enough to get you sober, but they're not enough to keep you sober.
It's one of the 6 legs of alcoholism. There's 6 things that will eventually fail you. This is out of the big book, chapter 2, There's a Solution, where one of the things that it talks about is the consequences, just like you said, Tom. People forget. You would think one DUI, another one comes. It's not the ifs, it's the whens type thing, you know, and all that's driven by fear. Like fear of probation kept me sober for a very tiny bit. But then all of a sudden, I get put on unsupervised probation where I don't have to check in as often. I'm like, oh, I don't have to be until this date. And that trivial reason to go take a drink. Well, I'll share this real quick just to give an idea of the insanity. I think I'm a pretty smart guy. I should have some pretty good common sense. I ended up on probation in Minnesota, DUI, and ended up, I made it. I had court order treatment, went to jail, worked the road crew, work release, all that stuff. And next thing you know, I'm passing these drug tests, doing the right thing on probation. Literally, I went months, like probably 3 months. Well, maybe not perfectly, but pretty close, without drinking or drugging too much. And the night before my scheduled UA, I get smashed drunk. Like I made it all the way till about 10 o'clock at night. And then I'm like, you know what? I'll have one beer and maybe it'll be out. Why did I do all that like hard work and then blew it literally the last 12 hours? It's insane. And next thing you know, no longer on unsupervised probation. They were threatening to throw me back in jail, but what they made me do is restart 6 months of treatment, outpatient. But like, just to give an idea, like the consequences in the beginning kept me sober, even knowing I had probation the next day.
And you had that one beer.
Oh, I had more than one beer.
Yeah, right. That's
I
what I'm
walked
saying.
in smashed to probation.
Wow.
Absolutely smashed. And in the morning, I remember I was like chugging apple cider vinegar, thinking that would do so. I think it actually probably made my UA worse.
Right.
Is there anything to that, T?
What,
the apple cider vinegar?
I think the thought behind that is your acid-base balance of the urine. So I don't personally know, to be honest with you, but it has to do with like when you do a UA and you dip it, it looks at the pH and obviously everything else that's in it. So if you can skew it, maybe it would. But if they're doing a real UA and they're sending it for confirmation, it's not going to do anything. You're gonna catch the metabolites. Is
there anything to apple cider vinegar that, because you see like a lot of the
home remedies,
yeah, and like soccer moms and stuff, they're like, oh, I'm doing this 5-day detox and
I have not
apple cider vinegar shots and stuff. Is that like a real thing? Does it do anything?
I have no experience with it, so I don't want to knock it or talk about it either way.
Well, I think it's a bunch of hogwash myself.
You know what the crazy part about that, to finish that story off?
No offense to soccer moms, by the way. Go ahead.
Not only did I fail my drug test, but that morning with apple cider vinegar, I drank so much water, like over the course of like probably an hour period driving in, like I almost drowned myself. Like I got so sick from just chugging mass amounts, well over a gallon. I probably drank 2 gallons in like an hour. Oh my gosh. And you know how you can drown yourself?
You're just like
internally or whatever. I don't know how that works exactly.
Ecstasy people do it. The people have died at raves. I've seen
too much water?
Yeah, from drinking too much water.
Really?
There was a girl. You could Google it. She died from. I don't know if. I guess she drowned herself. You're so.
It affects your sodium levels and makes your sodium go so low.
Essentially,
that it can affect your brain.
Yeah, and she was dead, and I think they counted some 168 water bottles or something that this girl drank over the course of maybe a festival or something. I don't know, but like Google it. I'm telling you, it was real.
Well, water tastes amazing on ecstasy.
Oh my gosh.
Never tried. I don't know.
Okay, the last C for the 4 C's of addiction is continued use, and I know we've kind of talked about this. Continued use is exactly how it sounds. Continued use, not stopping. And yeah.
I'll quote the big book on this one. Imagine that. Their alcoholic life seems the only normal one. Once you've been in this pattern long enough, like I literally thought the whole world was doing heroin. Like, not literally, but in my world, like when my mom would approach me, I'm like, Mom, everybody's doing these oxys and heroin. Like, what's the big deal? You know, like I know things aren't going well, but everybody does it. It literally becomes so normal, that way of life, that you don't even grasp reality at the fact like what you're doing is so far out of the norm. It's not normal to be jamming a needle in your arm 50 times a day. But to me, no big deal. Like, and I remember one time actually I went to a keg party in Minnesota. And this is when I was like new to Minnesota. So I was around a bunch of new people. I had a few drinks and I'm like, you know what? There's a guy down the road. You have some meth. I'm going to get some meth from him. I just so happened to pick up some syringes. And like me, like nothing, not realizing I'm in Minnesota where people are just, this is a normal keg party and people don't really do drugs like the Florida kid.
Right.
And all of a sudden I just bust out, you know, a needle and I'm like, right in front of everybody. And they're like, what's this guy doing? You know what I'm saying? Like it was so normal to me, but I remember them looking at me
being
and
like, wow.
what is this? Like they're just here. I thought it was a norm when in their life, it's something they've never seen before.
I was going to ask you that because I obviously frequented keg parties, and I can honestly tell you, even to this day, I've never once seen somebody shoot up in my addiction, my alcoholism stuff. If you would have walked into a party that we were having with needles and meth, you would have gotten your ass kicked, you know? And like, it was just like, and it wasn't even, and a lot of us had the same mentality around cocaine and any sort of drugs until we didn't. And then we started partaking in it, but we never did anything outside of cocaine. And, you know, me, I had my little Ziploc bag full of benzos, but I never told anybody about that. Now I wasn't cooking them down and shooting them up in my arm, but to watch somebody walk in to a keg party and just shoot meth, like that's very disrespectful, Ben.
No, I get that now, Tom. I do. Like, and yeah, I was,
Did anybody say anything to you? Do you remember?
I don't think it's disrespectful. I think it's like you said, it's essentially you end up surrounding yourself with people who do the same things that you're doing. So you don't see anything outside of your bubble.
Yeah.
Right. So like I hear patients all the time tell me like, I'm not a drug addict. I'm an alcoholic. I would never do drugs. You know, like I have patients try to distinguish the two to me, you know, or I'm not an alcoholic. I don't drink, you know, but I do heroin and I use IV drugs. So it's just, I think it's like you said, once you're in your bubble, it's who you surround yourself with.
Yeah.
Yeah. I looking back, I feel bad, especially I got to Minnesota as the opiate epidemic was taking off. I went to a treatment center that had 50 men, and it was me and one other guy that did opiates. Everybody else was there for alcohol and meth, and most of them smoked meth. There wasn't like, it was me and this other guy were IV drug users out of 50 people, and it was shortly after that the opiate epidemic took off nationwide. This was like in, I don't know, 2005, something like that. Like, it was big down here because of the doctor shopping, but going up there, nobody did opiates. And, you know, it's one of those things where I definitely owe a living amends to the fact that, like, the town that I was in, you know, here I am looking for opiates with people that don't normally do opiates, but they can get a little something here and there, like weed. And I'd be like, oh, you sell weed? Can you get any of this? And then they'd be like, oh, I might be able to find that. And they would go find it for me, never even having seen it before, and now I'm doing it in front of them, and they're like, "Can I try that?" Like, I hate saying this out loud, but the fact of the matter is like, a lot of people shot up for the first time with me.
Yeah,
and it sucks, man. But like, and there's people that have died, you know,
right?
And we were young, man. I was 23, 24. And some of them were younger than me, you know, like 20 years old. So it's like, But to have, like, I don't know, feel that responsibility of people doing it the first time. And I didn't ever, like, force anybody or anything. I just kind of looked at it like, hey, they're getting it for me. If they choose to do it, that's on them.
Right.
But, you know, it's sad.
Yeah.
Living amends.
Can't take that stuff back.
Look at you now.
Oof.
God's looking down on you, smiling.
I hope so, Tom.
Well, I think that's about it, guys. We covered the 4 C's. Craving, control, compulsion, and continued use. Anything else? Any final thoughts? No?
No.
Any plans for the weekend?
I don't think so.
Okay.
How about you? Are you going to Orlando?
Maybe. I don't know yet. Oh, you know what? Yes. I think.
Oh, do you work tomorrow? We're doing surf group tomorrow. There's supposed to be some little waves.
You are?
Yeah, in Juneau Pier.
Call off.
I'm looking forward to that. It's not necessarily the weekend, but I love doing the surf groups.
Yeah, I would go, but I have a pre-admission I have to do.
And you can't swim. We know.
Can you touch the ground where you guys go?
Sometimes.
Like, until you get out to the break spot. Yeah, sometimes. Depends.
No. I'm good.
We'll bring you a life jacket, Tom.
Well, I would do it if I had a life jacket. Do they wear life jackets when they're doing it?
No.
No.
What do you mean, no?
Who wears a life jacket surfing?
Somebody from
Conrad.
Pennsylvania.
God.
Me. They don't wear life jackets?
No.
Why?
Because you wouldn't be able to duck dive getting out.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
Oh, I know.
No.
How afraid of you are you of the water?
The water I'm not afraid of necessarily. It's the lack of control. You know, so I have the same fears of drowning as I would of dying in a plane crash. It's the no control. Like, I hate flying, you know. I don't like being in the ocean where I can't touch because, you know, it's just I'm very uncomfortable.
You do roller coasters? I forget where you stand with this.
Oh, I love roller coasters.
See, that makes no sense to me. I'm terrified of roller coasters.
See, for me, roller coasters are like they're bolted to the ground. I don't know. Like,
In theory.
In theory.
I don't ride fair rides. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I'm at Disney and
Universal.
yeah, like anything that's like, but I'm not going to ride a fair ride. That's no way. Because I had a very bad experience with a fair ride. Did I ever tell you this?
No.
I was on the Ferris wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, the Ferris wheel, that it obviously goes in circles, but they have the ones that you're on inside cages, and the cage spins while you're going in a circle. Well, I was with me and my friend Joe.
Like upside down?
Yeah, like
it looks like an egg, right? Like
right. It looks like an egg.
They close the cage over.
They close the yep.
Flips.
It's awful. It's terrible. I don't know why. But we were young. I don't even know, maybe 15, 16. And I remember going to Lawrence County Fair in Pennsylvania. And we filled up our Dr. Pepper bottles full of Bankers Club whiskey. And, you know, just enough Dr. Pepper to make it look like Dr. Pepper, right? And we go into... No, we were older than 15. My God, we weren't doing that then. We were probably 19, I would say. And we get on this ride. And I'm not shitting you. We get up, we're on the ride for a minute, and we get to the top, and the cage is going. A bolt breaks, literally like right down below our cage. And we're like not completely upside down, but pretty close to upside down. And stranded there as this carny dude shimmied his way up to the thing to fix the bolt, and then they lowered us down, and we got out, and they shut the ride down. So I'm good on fair rides.
What about, like, going back to swimming? Because I'd rather be in the ocean than in a lake. Lakes, like, you can't see that, like, that muddy stuff.
But that's because you grew up in
me.
Florida. I grew up in California, and we would always go to the lake.
Yeah,
they got those super clear lakes, right? With, like, the rock quarries and stuff.
It's not clear. I mean, when you jump in, you can see your body, but
There ain't no sharks in lakes, Ben.
And there's no gator, That was what was weird to me when I moved to Florida.
Freshwater trips me out a little.
That's
See,
'cause you
freshwater
grew up
doesn't
here.
bother me at all. I'm fine in freshwater, but put me in the ocean, it's a different story.
Well, like a year ago, there was some bank robber in Port St. Lucie. He robbed a bank and was running from the cops to get away, went to swim across the canal, and an alligator bit his arm off. You remember that?
No.
Yeah. Can you imagine being a police chase and you're swimming away across one of these canals and boom, alligator got him?
Ugh. I just saw a story, an article on, I can't remember where I saw it. You could look it up. There was this, and it's really sad. This boy and his sister, they were playing in the sand.
Yes,
and
I saw that.
And the sand caved in.
And the little girl died.
Yeah, like how?
And the
What?
boy, it went up to his neck or something.
How high? How big was this hole that they dug?
They showed it on the news. It looks like a normal hole that kids would dig. Like, when you're like, let me bury you.
Yeah.
And it looked like a normal hole.
Where was it?
It was
Del Rey?
it was close to here.
Del
On the
Rey or
beach?
Lake Worth?
Yeah, it was on the beach. Yeah, so I don't understand how that happens, but I'm not letting my kids do that no more.
Wow.
Yeah.
And like, I wonder what she did. Did she inhale the sand? Maybe.
Well, it suffocates you. It's like being in an avalanche.
Right, but like, can't you like? I mean, you
I think
dig
she
her
was
out?
2 or something. She was 2. The
Way
older
too
one was
young.
like 5. Yeah.
No parents were around to dig them out?
I'm sure they were. Maybe they were up a little further on the beach and didn't really notice anything. I mean,
Yeah, that's one
2-year-old
place I don't take my
youngs-
eye off the kids is the beach.
2-year-old lungs are probably don't take much to.
Suffocate.
Yeah. Ugh. Sad. Anyways, what?
I don't know, since we're talking about random stuff, I want to bring something up real quick. We were talking about this downstairs. You know how there was at the Gardens Mall, the mass shooting? Did you hear the latest on it?
It was a gang shooting,
Yeah, so
and they arrested 2 guys, and they're looking for another one.
we thought that there was a mass shooting at our local mall, and nobody could find the shooters. They shut down the mall, all that stuff. But I guess one gangbanger shot another gangbanger. The way that they found out who it was is they found the one guy's car in the parking lot, and it had an AK, a bunch of drugs bagged up for sale. But the thing that really got me, I was reading the article yesterday, and the one guy was convicted and did time for first-degree homicide in 2009. Got out, caught a second homicide case in 2015. It's 2024, and he's at the Gardens Mall shooting somebody else. Like, I just want to throw it out there. Like, I know drug addicts that have gotten locked up for, like, possession charges and done, like, served 7 years. This dude murdered 2 people, and he's out. Like, I sometimes I just have a hard time understanding what's going on in the court system. The hoops that they make some drug addicts jump through for their addiction. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes like drugs lead to, and unfortunately consequences are consequences. Like do the time, do the crime. But like to see something like that, I'm like, what is going on?
That doesn't make any sense.
No.
Well, Tambini, you have any random thoughts?
No,
No? All good?
not that I can think of.
Okay. You going on any wild excursions?
Nothing planned.
Nothing planned.
No, I'd like to go to the Bahamas maybe in like a few, like maybe a month.
Have you been there before?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure. You kidding?
I don't know.
She goes everywhere.
Well, I know that.
What countries have you been to?
Yeah, I am curious.
I don't travel that much. Like I'm a creature of habit, guys. So it's literally like I'll go to Vegas. I go to Jackson Hole. Sometimes I'll go to California to see my family and the Bahamas.
You went to Dubai.
I did do that, but that was for my husband. He's the one who's been to all the different countries. Not
Oh,
me.
really? Okay, so have you been anywhere other than Dubai? Like in Hawaii and...
Well, Hawaii because I live there, but I went to France with Pierre. He played in the U.S. Open when we were in college. So he played in the U.S. Open. He qualified here for golf. And because he was French, they gave him an invitation to the French Open. So we flew to France.
I didn't know he was French.
Yeah, that's where he was born.
His country is called New Caledonia.
Yeah, that's why I was
It's a
confused.
French. It's a French colony.
Oh, okay.
How old was he when he moved to Hawaii?
He was 19
So he went there for school?
for college.
And that's where you met. Dude,
And then the
this
rest
guy
is history.
has so much energy. Like, is he like that all the time?
Yeah.
Because I wish I was. Yeah. I really do.
Not if you spend your whole every day with him.
Oh, come on.
How old is he?
40?
Yeah, so like Tom and I are just about 40, and I'm like, I would kill to have as much energy as he has. Like, he is pumped all the time.
He is. It gives me anxiety.
It's amazing.
Well, he wouldn't have that much energy though if they had a few children. Right?
I don't know. He'd probably be like participating
Making the
with
kids
them.
do like,
He might be. He'd probably be he'd be a very good dad, I'm sure.
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah.
Hey, you guys can babysit our kids anytime you want.
3's a lot.
No, 5.
I'll take Levi.
It's break bad. All right, we got to wrap this up because I got to go see the new Bob Marley movie tonight with my Jamaican friends.
To the guy from Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
See, I grew up on reggae music, going to see Jimmy
One's
Cliff
from Jamaica and one's from Barbados. And the other one, I think, is from Riviera Beach. And then me. So it should be fun.
That's too funny, dude.
All right, that is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.